All right. I will go ahead and call to order the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission on this, what is today? The 12th day of October of 2021. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hopper? Mr. Hopper?
I'm here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Present.
Mr. Hoover?
Here.
Mr. Moan? We don't see him on Zoom. We'll watch to see if he logs on. And non-voting advisor, Mr. Alexander? At this time, we have a quorum of 4.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Alexander will not be able to make it today. That's what I was told. So, all right, is there a motion to approve our minutes from our September 13th meeting?
Harris motion.
Hoover
Motion
second.
by Mr. Harris. Second by Mr. Hoover. Thank you very much. Any additions, corrections, deletions, discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Hopper?
Aye.
Mr. Hoover?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, minutes are approved 4-0. New business resolution number 2021-13, additional appropriation. And this is scheduled for a public hearing. And I'll turn the floor over to whoever wants to talk about this.
He was in the room, I thought.
He
so I come in.
was. Yes.
If it'll be a minute, we can skip it and come back. I don't mind that.
We can move on to the rest of the tax abatement.
Adam's coming.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
do I need to share it?
You want to share that screen?
I guess I just wanted to see if I needed to share it or not. If anyone on this, is there anyone on the Zoom?
Mr. Hopper.
Oh, okay, I'll share. I think I would know how to use Zoom by now. Mr. Hopper, can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, I can see it, Adam.
Okay, cool. All right. Good afternoon, and thank you. So tonight you have before you the resolution for the Redevelopment Commission Tif appropriations. So a few meetings back, you had the passed by motion the RDC general fund budget. That has since moved forward to council, and I believe was introduced at the last Monday's meeting. This process is a separate statutory requirement that essentially appropriates the tax increment finance funds that are non-governmental, non-general fund dollars. Okay, so whereas the general fund portion, your redevelopment as a department is a relatively small bucket, these are really those TIF funds, those surplus funds and allocation funds that are used for debt service, new projects, et cetera. And in such, the methodology is quite considerably different than how the city and the finance department budget for kind of the general fund. So the methodology, you'll see that here a bit in the first handmost column, is really trying to project the year-end fund balance. So the budget methodology for the appropriation purposes is year-end fund balance plus 2022 annual TIF revenue forecast. Those together kind of create the maximum budgetary authority for TIF funds. So it is absolutely not the spend plan The financial plans and financial forecasts are considerably less and within these budgets, but this allows you all to have that capacity, budgetary authority next year to be able to essentially appropriate, spend as needed for projects and opportunities that present themselves. It also fully appropriates all of the 2022 debt service for the east side obligations, dry road obligations, and central obligations, including all of their remaining debt service reserve commitments as well. So the resolution goes through each of those categories. So it looks at the funds remaining by TIF, it looks at the projected revenues by TIF, and then ultimately, I believe on page 2 or 3 of the resolution goes by fund. And that would be the by fund is what reconciles out to the far rightmost hand column. So in summary, the projected year-end fund balance as of December 31st, 2021 is $60,526,380. And the total estimated appropriations across all funds, not counting any debt service reserve funds or debt proceed funds, is in aggregate across all TIF funds, $34,003,500. I'm happy to address any questions. We have additional exhibits as well that walk through fund by fund revenue forecasts, as well as the debt obligations. Welcome to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thanks, Adam. Anybody have any questions for Adam? All right, hearing none. I see it's scheduled for a public hearing. I don't know how we normally do it here. I'll take a page out of our council book and get a first and a second to put it on the floor and then open it for the public hearing, if that's all right with everybody.
I'll move that we open the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All right, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If anybody wants to come forward and speak for or against Resolution 2021-13, they may come and do so now, either online or in the council chambers. Is anybody there?
No one in the room.
Besides city
No one
staff in the
inside.
room, is anybody there? Okay.
Hearing none, I'll move we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All right. Hearing no comments, we'll close the public hearing. All right. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2021-13?
I'll motion that.
Motion by Mr. Harris. Second by Mr. Campbell. Any discussion from commission members? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Harris,
Hey,
Mr. Hopper,
Aye.
Mr. Hoover,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Resolution 2021-13 is approved 4-0. Resolution 2021-14, resolution approving an application for property tax deductions for certain real property located within the East Side Economic Development Area, Peterman Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. And I assume somebody is there to talk or online to speak about this.
Yes.
I'm here and plugging in some technology. Is there additional,
It
or
looks like there's only 2 there.
okay,
Mr. Hopper, excuse me, are you hearing the audio from the podium?
Yeah, I think so.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
All right, can you see the drawing?
Yes.
My name is Amanda Revenue. I'm the Vice President of Economic Development for Johnson County. We worked with the city and with Peterman Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing on their planned expansion at 677 Commerce Parkway. You'll recall that they received a tax abatement in 2018, and they have since then had substantial growth and have purchased the parcels around the building to accommodate that growth. They are currently planning a 54,000 square foot facility that would result in 150 new jobs with a average salary of $22 per hour. They're requesting a 3-year real property abatement on their $6.5 million investment. It would be phased in at about 33% per year. Chad Peterman, the president of Peterman, is here and is available to, he's going to give a short presentation, and then both of us are available with for any questions that you have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Yeah, as she said, we received you guys' blessing in 2018 and have considerably outgrown our facility and most importantly our parking lot. And so as we look for this expansion, I think it's going to be a really good thing for the company and most of all the community here in Greenwood. One of those reasons being is when we made the move, the one piece of our company that stayed behind in Marion County, where we formerly worked, was our school. And in October of 2020, we created the Peterman Top Tech Academy, where we train basically non-technical background people how to be heating and plumbing technicians. And currently we have a class of 17 students in there. We have 10 HVAC students and 7 plumbing students that we're training. And when we get through with this class, which they should finish up and be out in the field by the end of the year, we'll have trained since the inception of the school over 50 technicians from other trades or from other walks of life, whether it be EMTs, police officers, warehouse workers, whatever it may be, in the trades to then work for our company. We will be one of the considerable parts of the addition will be moving the school there. So we will have a 5,000 square foot working lab within the building, as well as classrooms and other resources for students to come and learn how to have a career in the trades, as well as additional warehouse space, additional meeting rooms for our current staff as we continue to grow and add jobs as we move forward.
Just a quick question. Sorry, Mr. Hopper, if I'm getting ahead of you.
No, you're fine.
So you said you're going to add 150 jobs. Is there a timeline on that? Just out of curiosity.
So this year alone, in 10 months, we've added over 150. So I would anticipate we're currently hiring anywhere between 15 and 20 every 2 weeks. So I would assume that would be pretty quick. Probably over the next year and a half, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And these 15 to 20 every week, are they staying long term, or are you moving through folks pretty quick?
Yeah, staying quite a bit. Our turnover is right around about 30%. That includes technicians and maybe apprentice types that are maybe new to the trade and stuff like that, on up through senior management as well.
And I heard you say there were same people in your school, but what's really driving the growth here in Greenwood? Is it just new residential construction? Do you do commercial as well? Sorry, I don't quite remember from 2018.
Yeah, no problem at all. No, we do all residential service repair and replacement. So the housing market has had a little bit of effect. What we have noticed as well is in our line of work is it's really a labor game, and which the school has really helped us kind of backfill that shortage of skilled labor out there when we're able to train our own. And so as we bring on the manpower, the demand residentially is out there. Everyone goes home and has these systems in their home that, over time are going to have issues or break or, need upgrading and things of that nature.
You have strong television marketing.
Yeah.
Any further questions for Mr. Peterman? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 2021-14?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Campbell. Is there a second?
I'll second that, President.
Second by Mr. Hoover. All right, any further discussion from commission members?
Randy, did you want to offer anything additionally, or?
I don't have anything additional to share. Thank you.
All right, great. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Hoover,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Hopper.
Aye. Resolution 2021-14 is approved 4-0. Glad you're growing. We always love to see our homegrown Greenwood businesses get bigger, and we're glad to help out. So, consideration of abatement agreement with Shear GW4.
Adam's walking back up to the podium.
All right.
So we actually came to you at, I believe, your last meeting and discussed, you had originally amended the SB1 and worked its way back through this. Ultimately, the agreement has, as I understand it, the final step is, as this item tonight, it went to Common Council after it was presented to you all and you had made a favorable recommendation to council. And actually, the Greenwood Council surprised us all and passed it unanimously through an introduction through second reading. So it got back a little more timely than we all were anticipating, which is a good thing. And nothing has materially changed from the initial structure. So the agreement as written is between the city and the owner. In this case, it's entity of Shear GW4. Ultimately, again, there's in tenant occupying about 42% of the space, but effectively wanted to be carved out or buy out their abatement portion. They are only leasing the space for 5 years with a 5-year option to renew. When we looked at the abatement savings relative to their portion, it was $500,000 for the first 5 years. If this is approved, ultimately their lease is entered into. As part of execution of this document, they would need to prove receipt to the city, specifically to the RDC, in that amount. If they renew for an additional 5 years, they would be liable for an additional $250,000 effectively payment of tax or upfront buyout of those. So these are one-time charges that will be likely closed and settled at the end of this fiscal year. Happy to address any questions. I know Kelsey, the city legal department's been very active in this as well.
All right, thanks, Adam. The tenant is not ready to say who they are yet, I take it?
I do not believe that is the case yet.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Adam from commission members?
And Adam, just to confirm, there's no essential changes since last time we reviewed this.
That's right. My understanding is that the approval process essentially tracks just like a normal abatement. So the initial SB1 modification went before you were making a recommendation to council. Council has approved that unanimously. And my understanding of the adoption process is this is the final. Now you're approving the agreement. And at that point, all city approvals will be in place and we would be able to execute documents.
Anything else for Adam?
The only thing that I might raise as a question, and I'll leave it to city legal to make a final determination on it, but it does show the redevelopment commission as being the party on behalf of the city. And I don't believe that the redevelopment commission gets involved with reviewing compliance of abatements after they're approved. And I do wonder if this maybe should be more in terms of a recommendation, and that the city through the mayor's office or the council might better be party to it. That said, as long as everyone on behalf of the city, particularly the council, has approved it, then I don't object to it.
Okay.
That's it.
Anybody from legal want to comment on that?
The Corporation Council did review this abatement agreement and felt that the RBC was the appropriate party to sign.
Okay.
Uh,
But I can't say I don't disagree with Stephen. I mean, we don't generally look at SB ones and say, yeah, you're in compliance. I mean, that's a council function. So will it continue to be a council function for this abatement? Or are we now shifting it?
I can speak to that. I don't believe there's any shift. I believe, especially with the council action, I believe in this case, all future compliance statements, specifically CF1s, will continue to route through the city's normal approval process, which goes ultimately before the Greenwood Common Council. The one change from the very original SB1 is function that going forward, the compliance will be based on that limited or adjusted revised SB1 that has been approved by both parties. That's at least my understanding of how it's going to be administered going forward. So in other words, the CF1s would be not presented to the Redevelopment Commission whatsoever. It ultimately go before the Greenwood Common Council and then ultimately county auditor.
So we can still approve the abatement agreement, and the approval processes, the review processes would remain the same.
Yes, sir.
I'll go ahead and move to approve the abatement agreement then.
I'll second that.
Was that you, Mr. Hoover? Sorry.
Was.
All right, second by Mr. Hoover. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Hopper,
Aye.
Mr. Hoover,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Agreement is approved 4-0. Next up is our annual Tif presentation.
It's me as well. I have been limited-
Putting you to work today, huh, Adam?
Yeah, I limited the number of words I can use today as well.
Is Kevin gonna get in on that?
I didn't know if you needed to pull something up, so. No, I hoping he,
Yeah, 50 words or less.
All right.
All right, hopefully you can see that on Zoom.
I can.
Great, okay. So, and I know that this is an additional annual compliance requirement, and as part of that requirement, we have made notice, the city controller made notice to the local overlapping Tif taxing districts, inviting them all to today's session. The recording of this can be provided as well as a copy of this for additional reference. And similar format to last year. Last year we presented this in December, so a little earlier this year. This ultimately came into this new requirement came in 2018. There's really 3 requirements in the new compliance: review of the commission's budget, long-term plans, and then review of the impact for each taxing unit. Going through, we've talked a little bit. The reason we brought this forward in the year is because we thought it made sense to make this presentation in with your TIF appropriations public hearing to just want to kind of more dovetail those together. So as previously mentioned in your agenda, the Redevelopment Commission as a department has its own general fund budget for PMs, small items. You can see the year-to-date performance here. This is what's included in your monthly report as well. Looking at the 2022 proposed appropriations, these are the functions that are before the Common Council tonight, or I'm sorry, this session for the 2022 year, same category, same budget as 2021, and it's scheduled for adoption this fall by the Common Council. With regards to the TIF funds, this is what the public hearing was earlier in your agenda. These map back to that resolution. And again, this just outlines the methodology for this as opposed to the general fund portion. The general fund portion is much more constrained by resources, whereas this is more of a pro forma or projection that's really trying to provide the maximum flexibility to the Redevelopment Commission, but doesn't necessarily tie back to the financial spend. Looking a little closer at allocation area finances, this is for 2020 actuals. This is the audited amounts that are in the annual report. This is posted on the city's website on the finance department page. And for a recap for anyone that's first time seeing this, in the year ended 2020, the total receipts across all funds were $11,087,103, with total expenditures of $19,374,605. One of the primary reasons why the receipts are less is that these funds include bond proceed drawdowns as well. So it's all funds. Total net cash flow across all funds for the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission for 2020 was $5,617,478. The cumulative fund balance, cash and investments into the year is $34,016,933, of which $21,367,674 was committed, and an additional $12,649,260 was restricted. So one of the government accounting standards board's pronouncements is referred to as GASB 54, and it establishes fund balance reporting requirements for the use of the Redevelopment Commission. Every dollar is restricted for a certain point by state statute. Dollars that are committed are reserved for either specific project encumbrances or specific project charters. So in this case, bond proceeds, debt service reserves, those types of things that actually have additional requirements other than just the normal statute provisions for TIF dollars expenditures. This schedule just looks at cash and investments by allocation area, maps back to the initial dollars. The cumulative amount that's actually placed in investments has actually been working down. You can see the amount of cash across both funds and then fund types. So in this case, surplus funds, allocation funds, bond proceeds, and then all of the debt service reserve funds as well. City Redevelopment Commission maintains quite a few dollars in debt service reserves. Those are obviously part of bond covenants issuance for third-party financing requirements, but then also are held in reserve, and if not otherwise drawn ahead of time, they would be used for the last amortized payments. This is a schedule of the outstanding bonds for the Redevelopment Commission. This does include the yet to close 2021 Central Expansion Bond Anticipation Notes, but it includes those anticipated proceeds. Also includes the subordinate economic development bonds that were issued for the Echelon project, the Verge project, that are scheduled for their first payments to start being recognized next year. And you can see the variety of different interest rates, terms, maturities across the different TIF districts. They're not sum total, but they've just been spaced out so that it shows by TIF district as well. So we tried to group east side versus Fry Road versus Central. None of the other TIF areas, specifically, there's no bonds outstanding for Worsville, Southwest, Airport, I-65 at this time. Looking at the cap table now by debt service, you can see the 2021 and the 2022 requirements by issuance, split by principal and interest, as well as any additional required debt service reserve transfers. This is something that we track with Jared in the finance department on a semi-annual basis to make sure that the net transfer into surplus is adjusting for these. One thing to consider when you're looking at this is the actual payment dates are in February and August. And one of the calculations here is that your December distribution, really November, your fall settlement that's paid out to you all and both TIF revenue in December, a portion of that is withheld and allocated towards the February of subsequent years debt service payment. Okay, see that. Tax rates by district. So in this case, each individual allocation area may overlay or may cross over multiple different tax districts in Johnson County, in the city of Greenwood in this case. So we have a listing of those various different tax districts, their historical rates. And then as we move towards the financial projections of this, the 2022 certified tax rates are not yet available. So we're carrying forward the 2021 rates, which is consistent with what we have done forecasts in the past, specifically for this presentation. I would also say one note here, for the sake of overlapping taxing, these rates are the gross district rate. So these are comprised obviously of the county, the schools, city, et cetera. But in cases where this also includes any school referendum rate as well, that rate is, while it's relevant to the district and relevant to the TIF, is not collected to the TIF whatsoever. So those are exempt, those referendum rates, in which there's one that impacts the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission. That amount is charged on new development, not subject to property tax caps or subject to TIF capture. As far as our financial assumptions, we took our baseline AV current year, we took our baseline TIF revenue forecast, available fund balances, current and expected debt service, and our net expected surplus TIF for 2022 is just over $5.5 million. And as of January 1st, we anticipate $63.3 million in principal outstanding debt. Our forward debt service coverage ratios, these are not actuals, but on a projection basis, we're looking at east side debt service coverage ratio of 144, 97% for the Fry Road, which I'll come back to, and then 193% for the central. So obviously the Fry Road TIF is one that we're monitoring very closely now that it's sub 1 on coverage. When you adjust for the fund balances in hand, we feel like we have a plan in place to maintain that debt service, essentially draw down cash, the TIF revenue coming in, so that there will be no shortfall of debt service payments. But certainly on a forward coverage basis, the Greenwood Park Mall tax appeals are continuously having an impact on that area, generating enough excess increment over bonds. So we have a plan in place that's been approved by the city to essentially reserve a portion of its fund balance to make sure that all remaining payments will be covered by that. So the second point is long-term plans. So first, all the economic development plans obviously have, or all the TIF areas have an economic development plan. Those are open for public record if any of the underlying units would like to see those. This slide again will make available. We just walks through the various items. As far as the long-term plans, there for each allocation area, there's a 5 to 7 year both economic development plan, and then in this case, a financial plan that goes through forecasted AV projects, and then on a bi-weekly cadence, it's updated based on updated projects, updated opportunities, and then once a month that's published internally as a report. This just kind of snippets a few aspects with regards to the economic plans for the public to be able to see kind of what is eligible, what are the specific clauses that would be necessitate a TIF expenditure. As far as the current areas, so there's a handful of different development areas, east side, Briar Road, southwest, Worshiper Road, and all the different allocation areas. This schedule just shows a breakdown of both the state codes for the gateway reporting, tax district, whether or not it's original expansion, and then likely most importantly for overlapping units is the anticipated durations and last payment year for what AV is captured. So in this, the most near term obviously is east side and Fry Road. There are a few still that have an asterisk, essentially that they were allocation areas that were created past the legislation change that essentially the 25-year life started on the first issuance of bonds. Because they don't have bonds, effectively don't have a predeterminable sunset. Moving on to capital projects, this just breaks down the total capital improvement plan by TIF area. We'll go into more of a project area, is project by project here in a moment. But in 2021, almost $40 million is planned in projects, and this is all sources. So this is cash, bonds, et cetera, across all TIFs. Drops down to just over 20 million in planned projects for 2022, and then slowly decreases after the out years. Again, this is the schedule that's maintained on a bi-weekly and monthly basis. Looking at those less visually and more just in a traditional table, you can see the projects that are either currently in planning, currently in works to be funded, or planned over the next 5 years at the project level. Last aspect is the impact. This has been, this just shows the various different ways that the City of Greenwood Redevelopment Commission has used TIF dollars, and really kind of just sets the eligible uses. And then as far as the impacted units, obviously it's the 3 different school corporations, it's the counties, it's the libraries, and then obviously the City of Greenwood as a taxing entity as well. Again, those notices were sent, and we're happy to provide this presentation to anyone who makes the request. And then ultimately, the City of Greenwood Mayor's Office still believes that the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission and TIF in general is an economic development tool, and that ultimately success in redevelopment commissions and that additional 500+ million in captured AV is leading to new jobs, you saw a moment ago, and though that leads to new housing and local income tax and all of the things. Additionally, it should be said that we're learning more and more that a lot of this real property, especially in the industrial sector, is paralleled with large investments in business, personal property tax, which has been passed through by the Redevelopment Commission to these units. So as that's becoming a major, larger and larger source of assessed value investment, there's no TIF capture on those today as well. I believe we've got a couple other here resources with regards to kind of just TIF 101 in case someone is new to that. Accelerate Indiana Municipalities puts out a lot of information. We would encourage them to look there, as well as other universities put out a lot of research papers on it. And ultimately, with regards to the captured assessed value, the trends have continued to be up and to the right. So Greenwood Redevelopment Commission eclipsed 550 million gross captured AV. We're monitoring growth rates by area as well. And you can see that the Fry Road TIF is growing considerably less than East Side, which is equally as old. And in both cases, they're growing considerably slower than the newer allocation areas as well. A lot of that growth is just none adjusted for abatements and those kind of things. So in areas where there was very low base and now there was a large industrial abatement, you can imagine the acceleration and that is pretty, on a percentage basis, it's pretty dramatic in the first few years. Worshiper Road is an example of that. And when we look at the captured, East Side remains to be the largest, followed by Central, and then followed by Worshiper Road now, and then Central Pride Road continues to actually shrink as a percentage of the total, as both its assessed value decreases from a capture basis, and the other ones are coming more online. This chart is one that I personally think a lot about. This is with regards to overlapping units. It's important to make sure that captured growth is net beneficial to all the parties. So one of the things that we track is essentially multiple growth rates. So looking at TIF growth in aggregate versus city net assessed value. So in a perfect world, the TIF growth would be growing at a faster rate than the city's net assessed value, because that's showing that you're capturing high growth areas and you're creating new additional increment at a faster rate than, let's say, average. So this chart through 2021 shows you the kind of trend over a 10-year basis. Cities realize about a 1.68 multiple of that. So the average growth in a TIF is 1.68 times what the city growth has been for that same period. If you're familiar with the measure of the actual calculations, CAGR is the compounded annual growth rate over a 10-year period. In both cases, when we look at it, 10-year, it's a 10-year trailing. So the 2022 numbers over the 2021, both were up trend-wise year over year. So the TIF grew on the last 10 years on average per year 7.17%, whereas the city NAV grew at 4.26%. With regards to a financial plan, long-term direction for many years now has been to get to $1 billion in captured assessed value. In 2022 to 550, the 10-year compounded annual growth rate 7.17. That trend line continued, gets to that long-term goal by 2031. This trend line is also kind of a static line, so it shows kind of where the actual AVs are coming in relative to the long-term plans. So from a long-term planning perspective, we feel comfortable that we're still on target. And I know that was a lot, and I probably grossly come up with my count, but it's important information. We want to make it transparent. We want to make sure that it's available for impacted parties. As far as additional information, city website, all the monthly reports, annual reports from the Redevelopment Commission are all published there. Additionally, the audited financials for 2020, which includes a lot of statistical information on the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission, both TIF, captured APs, debt, is all available as well. Not to mention the 2021 and 2022 city budgets, which are published online. And progress is being made on actually a transparency portal as well, of which this information will be shared. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. I appreciate your time and patience as I talk to you this today. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it, Adam. I will say, Mr. Campbell and I probably hear it more than anybody else, but we tend to hear that everything we do in the city is a mystery. Like these projects just pop up out of nowhere, and we're trying to be not transparent. Honestly, if you pay any attention, come to a meeting, get on our website, you'll find that every little piece of information and where every dollar goes is accounted for. And so I appreciate all the work that Adam has put in over the years. Mr. Wright now has continued that. So just wanted to say thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Adam? All right, we'll move on. I see we have no old business. So up next will be a capital project report for the 523 South Madison Avenue project.
Yeah, nothing to actual vote on today because it's over $100,000, but this was voted on in November, and it is two kind of work orders from Duke Energy, one of $51,310.08, another one of $267,254.09. What this does is remove or bury all the power lines in the middle school site that are not the big transmission lines on Madison, but it's all the stuff on Meridian and the smaller ones down by the roundabout. The developer has pledge to, I think it's 120,000, I don't know, it's 120, pay 120,000 of this cost. So the city would be asked to pick up the net. I think it removes 14 total poles, and part of our long-term goal of removing some of that electrical infrastructure that is so intrusive. But again, we'll have the map. It's actually in here. We got it right before this meeting a couple days ago. It's in the packet, I think, right in there. It's in the SharePoint, but we can pull that up at the next meeting. But it's over $100,000. No rush on this. And so this will be presented again at the next meeting.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin? All right, we'll move on. Financial report, monthly financial report.
I don't have anything to present other than what was included electronically. Happy to any question, to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Adam? Hearing none, we'll move on to the FedEx Economic Development Project Agreement, consideration of Phase 1 project milestone payment.
So I wanted to, at your last meeting, we discussed the update there. We conducted a field visit on September 28th of their facility, based on the recommendation of RDC's council. And I just wanted to share a few notes from that, and then ultimately they are in request of, they are essentially asking for Phase 1 distribution of their incentive, which is approximately $282,015. Previously, what was approved in the project agreement is effectively $564,030, which was a draw incentive as opposed to a tax payment. And they had two different phases of that. Phase 1, or half of that, was going to be contingent upon the investment of a certain amount of business personal property by the end of last year at this location, and reported on their business tax return. Phase 2 condition isn't until 2023. It is a hiring attainment program. Okay, so they have FedEx has provided their annual compliance reports and everything as scheduled. As part of their request, we ultimately need a motion from the Redevelopment Commission on defining them in substantial compliance with Phase 1, and a motion to approve claim up to that amount. They have not invoiced the city. They're seeking that approval, and ultimately would likely invoice upon any direction with you. So a little bit of background context. We went to the site visit. The project agreement anticipated that they had to invest $23.5 million as of the end of December 31st. They had to report that amount on their business tax return in May of this year. They had done that. They actually exceeded those. They reported $28 million on line 1, and the net assessed value that would be taxable was approximately $11.5 million reportable as of 12/31's business tax return. So that's new taxable property invested within that building. A couple other observations just that we conducted from the field visit was that there's approximately 180 doors in that base, in that facility. They group those in A, B, and C zones, 60 doors per zone. Only 60 of those doors were active, and they're planning to launch Zone B prep peak season, which is November, December this year. The other observation I made was that there was significant still capital investment work in the lines in progress. So they were actively welding and building out new lines, et cetera. So I only say that in the anticipation that they may, when they file this year's business property tax return, there may be additional reported investments in addition to what they had reported. The gentleman that gave us a tour kind of offered it to any of you all. If you'd like to go see it, they're happy to show you around. They have, obviously, it's a pretty significantly sized building, and the majority of the investment property, essentially 92% of the total reported investment, was really what I would call kind of inline conveyor system. So if you're familiar with the building location, it's a very long horizontal building. Packages, the doors essentially are on the west and east side of the building. Once you're in, so on one side of the building is where freight comes in for processing, the other side is out. Everything in between running horizontal is all of the sorting and conveyor system. And it is the entire, I would say, I think I approximated about 85% of the covered floor space is really that system. And approximately 92% of what they invested is all of the parts and pieces and camera technology that's going into doing that. It's highly autonomous and does essentially all the pre-filtering, et cetera. So anyway, I just want to try to provide that additional context, hope that it helps you all. Ultimately tonight, we're just seeking direction from the Redevelopment Commission on how you would like us to respond back to FedEx, specifically as it relates to their submission of their compliance packet and opening conversations with regards to requesting the first 50% of their incentive. And this was also, for context, these were committed dollars from the east side surplus.
Adam, could you tell me again how much that payment is?
Yeah, so the phase one is $282,015, and it's effectively half of the $564,030. That was the maximum incentive that they had. And the wording in the agreement was essentially pro rata attainment for each phase, as I read it. So if you deem that they're in, a smaller percentage attainment, then that would be how we would calculate that first phase.
The general key question is, have they achieved 100% compliance? If they haven't, then approve processing a claim in the full $282,015 amount.
And Adam, based on your examination of what's going on out there, coupled with Stephen's review of the documents, is that the recommendation from?
Yeah, I think, I can't speak for you all, but I think it was a good recommendation to go. It's not as it's not as clean as saying there's the piece of equipment, right? Because it was the initial build out of the entire function. But what I can say is that they're actively still investing. They already have reported invested cost, at least top line in excess of the requirement. And they are reporting 11.5 million in new taxable property. My personal professional opinion is that will probably increase over the next few years as they bring on additional costs. So I believe that there are significant investments being made on the inside of that building. I can't point to one piece of equipment, unfortunately, and be able to say yes, but the entire operation as reported, I can speak to.
All right. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion that.
Motion by Mr. Hoover.
Make sure
Is there a second?
it's a substantial compliance.
Oh, Mr. Harris, sorry. I think it was Harris, sorry.
Well, I'll second the motion, and then we'll have a question discussion. So
Okay.
the motion is to deem them to be in substantial compliance with their requirements and to authorize distribution of the incentive of $282,15.
50.
And just as clarification, I'm reluctant to use the word substantial compliance if we're going to give the full 100% incentive. And so I would suggest that instead you simply say that they have satisfied their phase one obligations.
But it's really like 50% of the whole compliance.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and 100% of phase one, 50% of it. No.
I get just so our minutes of regret.
Satisfied 100% of phase one requirements.
Mr. Harris, is that?
Yeah, they're over and above what they committed, so.
Now I'd make that, I would second that, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right. Thank you, sirs. Any further discussions and questions? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Hoover,
Aye.
Mr. Hopper.
Aye. Motion is approved 4-0.
We'll let them know. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
All right, thank you, Adam. Department reports, Corporation Council.
Sam's coming.
Okay,
Corporation Council has only one item tonight, and that is the naming rights agreement. This was presented by Kelsey Snella, who is the Assistant City Attorney who represents the
Tonight for consideration, it's a naming rights agreement with the Greenwood Parks Foundation. So at this time, it's for the field house itself, and basically any sponsorships that they would like to enter into within the field house. I believe they're talking about the golf simulators, all of those amenities as well. So it's inclusive of the field house itself and any amenities within the field house.
don't we already have commitments for some of these names already?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so we should probably make sure that we allow those, huh? That's what we're doing here.
The Board of Public Works has already signed off on this agreement, but at this time, RDC obviously owns the field house, so you would be part of that agreement as well.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for Kelsey? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Hoover. Second by Mr. Campbell. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Hopper.
Aye.
Mr. Hoover,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Motion is approved 4-0. I see we have at least one thing for you.
Before we get too far, don't skip over me, David.
Yeah, I said, Mr. Watson, maybe you didn't hear me correct there in the room. Sorry.
It won't take long though.
All right, you're up, sir.
All right, we have received the annual report from the BBC Real Estate LLC in relation to the Economic Development Project Agreement for the Open Barrel facility and that real estate. And my review of it indicates that they have satisfied their annual reporting requirements. And I would note that their assessed valuation has increased by approximately $14,300, which would be about a 50% increase. Last year, their assessed value looks like it was about $1.1 million. I'm sorry, taxes is what I was actually focusing on. That last year, taxes was $23,325,000 that they paid. And so they've exceeded 50%, it looks like. That's obviously positive. They have increased their assessed value from the original assessed value of a little over $1.1 million. It's now a little over $2 million. So they've almost doubled the assessed value of the property. And they have fully leased their space there. And they have increased the full-time employment in the facility from what originally was approximately 44 to what is now 53. Last year it was 48, so they're continuing their upward trend. And then their average hourly wage has increased last year. Well, originally it was $27 when the agreement was first entered into. And last year it was reported at $28.25, and this year is now up to $29 per hour. So I would recommend that they be found to be in compliance with their annual report obligations.
I will make that motion. Is there a second?
Harris will second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Thank you, sir. Any questions or discussion about it? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Hopper,
Aye.
Mr. Hoover,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Thank you.
And before we move on, I would note that the developer is not present today. But last year, we waived their requirement to be here, and I think they assumed that they had changed, so they assumed that was going to apply this year.
All right. Well, only if you had given an unfavorable recommendation would I want to talk to him. So yeah, it's okay by me. All right, that motion was approved 4-0. Thank you, sir. City Controller, Mr. Wright.
Hi, everyone. I'm Craig Standen tonight, Jared's the Deputy Controller. So I'm here to present the professional service agreement with ADS Consulting, also known as Stone Municipal Group. As you've seen earlier, Adam does quite a bit of different things, but basically it's, for his financial planning services and economic development services for the year 2022. I think you guys probably had a chance to read through the specifics. So that's what I'm presenting for approval tonight.
Is
All
there
right, any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
this agreement over last year's?
No, it's basically very similar to last year as far as what I read through before coming in here. Pretty much everything was about the same. Sorry.
Adam shaking his head, there's no changes.
We just changed the year.
I didn't think there was anything major.
Drop your fin hat or?
No changes.
Do you want any changes, Adam? All right.
Really great.
I will again make that motion to keep us moving here to approve the PSA with ADS Consulting.
I'll second. Campbell.
Second by Mr. Campbell. Thank you, sir. Any questions from the commission members? All right, hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Hoover,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Hopper.
Aye. PSA with ADS Consulting is approved by a vote 4-0. City Engineer, Mr. Johnston.
Good evening. Daniel was unable to attend this evening. He is on PTO with his family this week, so good for him. This is Paul Pion, the Engineering Division. The Engineering Division, we're asking to approve and adopt resolution number 2021-15. And this is for additional funding of the local portion for the school zone warning signal and pedestrian crossing signal project that we have with the MPO. And then the funds are written through the Indiana Department of Transportation. The reason for the increase was due to the bid amount, the low bid amount that we received for this project. It was well above what was estimated back in January of this year. Back in January, the estimate was around $396,000 for the construction and around $59,000 for the inspection. So those were the funds that have been approved through the MPO. Those were the funds that were used to come up with our 10% share at that time, which was $50,069 for those two portions of that project. But unfortunately, the bid came in substantially higher, as I stated, at $588,716. There were three bids received that day. The other two, one of them was $698,000, and the third bid was $899,000. So we heard that it was due to a heavy workload for a lot of contractors at this point in time. The supply chain to get items has made costs go up for these type of items that we need for this project. And the city felt that if we rebid the project, or if we rejected the bids we received and rebid it, we don't feel that there would be any advantage to doing that as far as having a lower bid come in. And due to the safety concerns and of this project for the pedestrians in general and the school children, that we should move forward with this and then come to the RDC and ask for this additional funding, which is around $201,200. For a total of $251,255.
Paul, was there any ability to go back to the NPO and tell them the story and say, hey, you know,
That way, I may know the story.
and they,
The way the funds are allocated, other projects have funds already allocated to them from other municipalities and government agencies. And so it's very difficult, especially after bidding, to try to get additional funds. So we did try to do that. So it was decided that we would really like to move forward because of the type of project it is. It's been talked about for the last, I think, over 5 years. It's just unfortunate that it was bid during this time with our economy, the way everything is being affected by the trying to answer the questions you might have.
I do have a question you may not be able to answer, but I know the list that is on here. What about new schools that come to the city or relocate? Is there a mechanism for installing these same kind of school zone signals in those areas?
Yeah, well, it would be able to be done. Actually, the Westwood Elementary location over there on Honey Creek Road, it was originally part of this project. And because of some right-of-way issues that came up late in the project and trying to get those issues resolved and trying to keep this project on schedule, that school location was actually pulled out of this project so this could keep moving forward. And the city's actually looking into them doing a separate project for that school site only. So for any future school sites, yeah, I would think we could do it separately.
Yeah, well, I like these kind of signals and I'm glad this is being done. But I do know Greenwood Christian Academy now has a facility on Main Street. And I don't know, I think they're maintaining the facility on Worsville Road, but they have a facility, they're connected with Community Church of Greenwood, the gathering place is now Greenwood Christian High School. And so I know it's not gonna be part of this project. I'm just curious if there's a mechanism, because this is funded by RDC, and I didn't know if new ones that came online would come through us, or there's another mechanism for that. I don't know how that works. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the funding came through the RDC originally. I can't remember why the RDC was picked. I can't answer that question. But to say that we could do them separately, I mean, I think that can be done because we, like I said, we're not going to do it west.
All right, yeah, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Peony?
well, I'll move we attach resolution 2021-15 as presented.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
I hate that.
Motion by Mr. Hoover, second by Mr. Harris. Thank you. Any further comments or questions?
Thanks.
All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell,
All right,
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Hopper.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
That motion is approved 4-0. Thank you. Anything from the mayor today?
From the mayor's office.
All right. All right. Claims docket in the amount of $1,779,866.41. Is there a motion to approve?
Make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Campbell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hoover. Any questions or comments from anybody today? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Hopper,
Aye.
Hoover,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
All right, claims docket has been approved 4-0. Any other business to come before the commission today?
Do you want me to just have the signables available for you on Monday at council?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yep.
All right, I'll have them
Thank
folder.
you. I appreciate it. Anything else? Looks like we've lost everybody online but myself. So unless there's somebody in the council chambers who wants anything else, we will stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Have a good rest of your vacation, David.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Though, unfortunately, the weather's been perfect here, 80 and